I'm DeAnn Perrigo, and welcome to Gamel's Facebook Live today. And we're going to have a fun time today. We're going to talk about borders, because we all know that borders are sometimes a little wavy. And we want to be able to, not only for ourselves, but to be able to teach our customers how to put on borders so that they lay flat and that they also create a square quilt. Ever had one of those quilts come in that's about, this big on the sides and this big on the center and then back out at the corners? Not a good thing. So we're going to talk about that. In fact, I have a little picture show for you on my monitor. You've seen my monitor before. So let's move over there and let's look at a couple pictures, and we'll talk about what causes some borders to be wavy. In this picture, you can see that it is a mitered corner. And with mitered corners, you have a natural bias, and bias is stretchy, and it can cause all sorts of fun and creative waves in a border. But it also, if it's not put on right, is going to give a whole bunch of extra fabric in that area. And that's what you can see in this one. In fact, when I quilted this, I folded over that corner miter and just redid it and put in some basting stitches, and then the customer was able to tack those down a little bit better after the quilting when she got it home. Next picture, this has a bias issue as well. You can see the triangle shaped blocks. That created a little bit, but also probably the way that she put her border on caused it as well. I was able to get all of those nice and flat when it was done. Here's a bit more extreme border issue with this quilt. You can see both the left side of it and the right side of it. And the reason that she had trouble was she had an inconsistency in the size of her blocks, as well as the way that she sewed on her borders. I was able to get most of this done. And here's it hanging in the Clark County Fair. And you can see that I got them almost completely flat. But it does take a lot of extra work on my part, whereas if they had simply put them on a nice, easy way, other than the way they did it, which we'll talk about, it would have come out flat and we wouldn't have had any of those problems. So let's come back around here where my table is. And we'll talk about some of the ways that we can put borders on that are going to eliminate those problems. On this little quilt, you can see that I already have the inner border on, and it has created nice square corners. It's because of the way that I put it on. I don't just take my border and sew it top to bottom and then cut off at the bottom. Because what happens when we do that is our presser feet are pushing up and our hopping foot pushes down, and they don't move exactly together. So the two pieces of fabric are going to move a little bit. And usually on a domestic machine, the top layer is going to put a little bit extra fluff in all the way down. So it's like little teeny tiny ruffles. And so by the time you get the third, fourth border on, you can have a whole Western style skirt going with all sorts of different ruffles. And so we want to eliminate that. And it's a very, very simple process. What I have done is I have taken the two borders that I have and put them together. And I have just smoothed them out so they are nice and together. And the nice thing about cotton fabric, and especially what I'm using here, which is flannel, is that they stick to each other very well. And that's nice because that's going to give me a nice straight curve when I get, a nice straight cut when I get to that point. Now what I'm doing is I am laying both of those down along the center seam will be relatively straight, I hope. And so when I lay them down across there, overlapping, since I have not cut off my selvages, I need to cut them off at the same time. So what I'm going to do is lay my ruler over the top, right along the edge of the inner border, or if it had been the inner border I was working on, it would be right against the blocks. And then straight across. And if you see, then it's nice and exact. Before I move anything though, I want to pin it just to make sure that it stays. Normally, I would walk around the table so that I could cut this side because I do not want to lean over myself. There is no blood in my studio. We're not going to cut ourselves. So I can't do that without showing you my backside. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it. If this had been a very giant quilt that's too big for my table, I'd be doing it down on the floor. Especially with the carpet in my studio, that gives another grippy space so that they stay together very well. Okay, so open this up. Check to make sure that it hasn't moved, and it hasn't. And we know it's secure on this side. So as we move over, we can see that I have made sure that it is straight underneath, straight on top. There's no buckles. And again, I'm just going to cut on this side. Nice and straight. So this is the size of the center of the quilt. And if you noticed on each of the pictures that I showed you of quilts, that the center tends to be one size, and then the corners can often go out and be larger. And we're going to contain that by doing it this way, not just measuring it down the side. Because again, sides are going to get bigger every time you go out. So let's just lay this on here, and we're going to pin at the corners. There's one. We'll pin on this side. There's two. This is laying nice and flat because I had done this on the inner border. If it was not, or if it was very large, you can take and fold it in, fold it in half, and make any adjustments that you have to, and then pin it. And then you could do that same thing over and again, however many times you need. But if it's a small quilt like this, I can just smooth it out, make sure it's flat, and pin it here. I'm not normally a pinner. A lot of my blocks, I just hold as I go, but definitely I pin every single one of my borders because I want to make sure that it creates a square quilt or a perfectly square rectangle quilt, however you want to call that. So, do you have any questions about how to do this and how to share this with your customers so that they can have perfectly straight borders as well? So, Brad, are you finding any questions on there?
I'm not seeing any questions, but I see some viewers from Oklahoma. I just want to shout out to our Oklahoman friends, and I miss chili cheese fries from Eskimo Joe's.
Yes, we did live in Oklahoma for a while when our kids were little, and they all developed a wonderful drawl. I just want to share with you this pattern that I used was Charming Fractions by Mountain Peak Creations. I'll put that in the comments. So if you want to purchase that from your local quilt shop, you can do that. And if you want more detail on how to make the wavy borders nice and flat, like I showed you in my last picture, go to gaml.com. They have a whole section on education. And you can even purchase the whole tour from last year that we had. And one of the classes in the tour on all three formats, whether you're hand-guided, your Elevate, or your Statler, they have a class for you on how to deal with wavy borders, how to load a quilt, whether to baste or not, all those things. So check those out if you get a chance. So I will talk to you later. Have a good day, everybody.